Employment. For the Naval Media Center, I'm Petty Officer Sean Linville.
Squadrons aren't the only Navy communities making adjustments to meet Fleet Response Plan requirements. Petty Officer Dave Heitz from our San Diego Bureau joins us and tells us about another Navy community making adjustments.
That's right, Liz. Aerographers' mates are gearing up for a major change. The Pacific Meteorological and Oceanographic Center, or METOC in San Diego, has already taken on additional sailors, with more on the way.
We will almost double in size as OA Division personnel roll off the ships and come to the command.
There will be a pool of bodies that have been trained up and that can deploy at any time. So that makes our community more flexible to the needs of the Navy.
The more junior people, they're staying in the barracks now instead of on the ship. Their quality of life is certainly going to improve. And in the long term, we're getting to be able to do a lot more training.
As opposed to just being on one platform for 3 years, the potential is for them to be on one or two different platforms but providing the same service because of their education and experience.
You know your job, you know you're going to be supporting all the different units and be well able to do that.
If a ship is coming in for, say, an extended yard period and another carrier needs personnel due to illness or emergency leave, we can fill in the gap with someone from our group.
We want to make sure we get this right before this becomes a wholesale fleet plan, probably within the next year or so. Our training right now is so much better than it used to be, and we're going to be able to handle this without any problem at all. I have no qualms about that.
With more than 3,000 sailors moving from east to west coast, USS Ronald Reagan monopolized moving vans in Norfolk, Virginia for a couple of months. This is how it went for one Reagan family. Kai Kurt decided to fly to San Diego with his 2-year-old son Cole, while his wife, ABF-3 Carol Kurt, made her way here traveling around South America. Planning their move ahead of time, they were able to find an apartment, a job for Kai, and daycare for Cole. Now that Kai and Cole have been in San Diego for a couple of months, life is almost back to normal. But being a temporary single parent isn't easy.
One of the things that I had to do, because she wasn't here, was I had to take my son to my parents' house, his grandparents' house, for a couple weeks so I could find daycare. You know, we did everything like the Reagan suggested, which was child care through the Navy, but unfortunately they had a 3-month waiting list.
It was a tough transition for Cole, especially with his mom being out to sea for 2 months.
At the beginning, he'd wake up crying at night, asking for his mommy. He knows now that mommy's at work and she'll be home soon, and that's what he says if you ask him. He goes, mommy's at work and she'll be home soon.
Kai loves to cook, but Carol's plans for her first night in San Diego include a meal out.
Once my wife gets home, we're planning on going. I made reservations at a really nice restaurant because she's been wanting a real meal, she said.
Kai and Carol Kurt are just one of hundreds of couples who will celebrate USS Ronald Reagan's arrival. It's been a long time coming, but USS Reagan and her crew finally have a permanent place to call home. For the Naval Media Center, I'm Petty Officer Dave Heitz.
Petty Officer Cheryl Wilson has another story about how the Navy helps families transition.
Bringing over 3,000 new people into a city definitely affects the local economy. USS Ronald Reagan changing home ports to San Diego is no exception.
This is huge. First of all, all of our Chamber of Commerce types would tell you it's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, over $200 million a year that it contributes to the economy.
All that money goes into the city at various places, from local shops to museums, and even to provide more jobs for San Diego's residents.
If you bring something like this in here, there are so many people involved. It's not just the payrolls of the people who are directly connected, but it's the ship repair companies, it's the companies that provide supplies. There's like a multiplier effect that we see throughout the entire economy.
Supervisor Roberts is not alone in this idea for the San Diego economy.
Economic generator is really quite strong. You think about the Super Bowl and what it brings to San Diego, and this has a far greater impact than the Super Bowl coming to San Diego, and it's not just a one-time expenditure, but it's ongoing. So we know that families buy food, they buy cars, they shop.
But Congresswoman Davis feels that while the Reagan brings more money to San Diego, the sailors and their families do more for the community as people.
I think the way that San Diego benefits is the caliber of people that come to San Diego. Many, many volunteers in our schools, in our communities, soccer coaches, Little League coaches, all those folks who are so much a part of San Diego, and we've all benefited from that whenever there's a major carrier that comes to San Diego. We're very fortunate.
For the Naval Media Center, I'm Petty Officer Cheryl Wilson.
Now let's take a quick look at the highlights and keynote remarks from USS Ronald Reagan's home porting ceremony.
Men and women of Ronald Reagan, you face a challenging road ahead as you make the preparations over the next year to join the Fleet Response Plan. When you're ready, you and your Air Wing will undoubtedly provide the President with the ability to deliver precise, persistent striking power anywhere, anytime. Welcome to the fleet.
This crew worked hard to deliver a new and powerful warship to Commander, U.S. Pacific Fleet, and to Commander, Naval Air Forces, and to bring home to San Diego a symbol of the greatness of one of California's sons, President Ronald Reagan.
This ship is a mammoth government-owned structure, but it's also crewed by the people that Ronald Reagan most liked and admired, those who wear the uniform of this great country. And this ship, like the man for whom it's named, will always be a symbol of valor and human freedom.
And although the last 6 weeks have been difficult, and today is very bittersweet, I'm so honored to be here as the USS Ronald Reagan comes into home port. Ronnie would have loved the sight of this great ship coming into his beloved California. I know how proud he was to have this ship named after him. And in my heart, I know he's looking down on us today and smiling.
That's a brief look at what went on. We'll be back with one final look at the festivities later in this program. Back to you, JO1.
Thanks, Liz. Several American presidents have served in the United States military, but only one served as a submariner. During a recent interview with America's 39th president, Jimmy Carter shared some of his Navy memories and talked about how his military service affected his life. James Earl Carter Jr. knew where he wanted to go to college before he was even done with kindergarten.
When I was 5 years old, I had already chosen a Naval Academy. I grew up during the Depression years on a farm. No one in my family had ever been able to finish high school. And there were only two free colleges in the United States then, West Point and Annapolis. And I had a favorite uncle in the Navy, serving in the Pacific. So I chose the Navy, and so when I was 5 or 6 years old, if anybody asked me, what are you going to do when you grow up? I always said, like a parrot, I want to go to Annapolis. So I never did change my career ambition all the way through my preparation for college. That was my only goal in life, was to be a naval officer.
And why a submariner afterwards?
I chose what I thought was the best aspect of American armed service, and that was submarines. There was a lot of competition for it, and I was overjoyed when I was finally chosen to be a submariner. But I considered it to be the elite branch of service in the Navy, highly challenging, and one that was honored through its superb contributions to our Navy's success in the Second World War. I actually reported to my first submarine the last week in 1948. And the submarine, almost immediately after I got on board, left Pearl Harbor in Hawaii and went on a long cruise to the Western Pacific. And so I was almost immediately immersed in an encapsulated environment where I and about 70 other people depended for our lives and for our safety on each other.
What was your most memorable Navy moment, be it on a submarine or anything, any of your time in service?
Admiral Rickover literally changed my life. My first interview with him was something that I'll never forget. We went through a long series of very debilitating questions where I couldn't quite answer his standards, and he finally asked me at the end, how did you do at the Naval Academy? And I said, I did quite well. I stood so-and-so in a class of 800 or so. And he said, did you do your best? And I started to say, yes, sir. And I hesitated for a while, told him the real truth. I didn't always do my best. And he looked at me with those cold and steely eyes for almost a minute. And he finally said, "Why not?" And he turned his chair around to end the interview. And I sat there for a long time. And finally I got up and stumbled out of the room. Because I didn't have an answer. Why did you not always do your best? And later I found out that that honest answer may have been one of the things that made Admiral Rickover choose me above all the others.
President Carter served 11 years before resigning his commission as a lieutenant to manage his family's farming business. But with the recent christening of the submarine USS Jimmy Carter, his connection to the Navy is stronger than ever.
No matter what my challenges are, today or when I was president, when I was governor, when I was a businessman, when I was a farmer, I still extract the benefits of my service in the Navy to meet the challenges of the present day. But I still feel a kinship with those who dedicate their lives, or a good portion of their lives, to serving our country as members of the military force and particularly the Navy.
He says inside the president there's still the sailor and the farm boy who wanted to be just like his uncle.
From Pier K at NAS North Island, this is Navy Marine Corps News. For more information on this program, go to www.news.navy.mil. We leave you with a final look at the festivities in San Diego. For Petty Officer Nikki Maxwell and the Worldwide Naval Media Center team, I'm Petty Officer Liz Murray.
He would be proud of them. Serve him well, because he served you well. Thank you.
Send us your feedback at nmcn@mediacin.navy.mil. Navy Marine Corps News is brought to you by the Worldwide Naval Media Center team.